In 1901, a group of sponge divers surfaced from the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea carrying pieces of a shipwreck. At first, the discovery didn't seem unusual. The wreck was packed with statues, pottery, jewelry, and treasure from the ancient world. But buried among the artifacts was something nobody could explain. It looked like a lump of rock, corroded, broken, worthless. Museum workers almost ignored it. Then someone noticed a bronze gear sticking out of the stone. That was strange. Ancient Greeks weren't supposed to build machines with complex gears, not machines like this. When researchers finally cleaned the object, they discovered dozens of interlocking gears hidden inside. The mechanism could predict eclipses, track the moon, follow the movements of planets, and calculate astronomical events decades into the future. It was so advanced that some scientists initially thought it must be a modern object that somehow ended up in an ancient shipwreck, but it wasn't. The device was over 2,000 years old, and for more than a century, people have called it the world's first computer. But that's where the story gets strange, because the most fascinating thing about the Antikythera mechanism isn't what it could do, it's what it couldn't do. And those limitations may reveal something even more shocking than the machine itself. Because if this device wasn't the peak of ancient technology, then what was? The machine that shouldn't exist. The Antikythera mechanism was built sometime around the 2nd century BC. To understand how impossible that sounds, imagine finding a working laptop inside a Viking grave. That's how historians felt. The ancient world had impressive engineering. They built aqueducts, massive temples, warships, but precision gear systems? That was different. The mechanism contained more than 30 bronze gears, carefully cut and arranged inside a wooden case. Many of the gears were smaller than a modern wristwatch gear. Every tooth had to be shaped by hand. One mistake could ruin the entire machine. Yet somehow, ancient craftsmen produced something that wouldn't appear again in Europe for over 1,000 years. For decades, researchers couldn't even understand what they were looking at. The fragments were too damaged, too incomplete, too mysterious. Then technology finally caught up. Using advanced X-ray scans, scientists peered inside the corrosion without opening the fragments, and what they found changed everything. Because the machine wasn't just tracking time, it was tracking the universe. But the way it tracked the universe revealed a problem that nobody expected. It could predict the sky, but not understand it. Turn a small crank on the side of the Antikythera mechanism, and gears begin moving. Dials rotate, pointers shift, calendars advance. The machine could tell you where the sun would appear, where the moon would appear, when eclipses would happen, even the positions of several known planets. To an ancient observer, this probably felt like magic, but there was a catch. The mechanism didn't actually understand any of it. It wasn't discovering anything. It wasn't calculating from scientific laws. It was repeating patterns. Imagine a music box. A music box can play a song perfectly, but it doesn't know what music is. The Antikythera mechanism worked the same way. Its gears encoded observations collected over generations. It followed known cycles, known movements, known patterns. It could tell you what the sky would do because someone else had already figured out the rhythm, and that limitation reveals something important. The machine was brilliant, but the people who created the knowledge behind it may have been even more brilliant, which raises a disturbing question. If this machine was only the final product, where did all the missing science go? The lost library problem. The Antikythera mechanism creates a mystery most people never think about. Machines don't appear out of nowhere. Every technology has ancestors. Cars came from bicycles. Computers came from calculators. Airplanes came from centuries of experiments. So where are the earlier versions? Where are the prototypes? The failures? The simpler models? Researchers have searched for decades. Nothing. The Antikythera mechanism appears almost fully formed, like someone skipped several chapters of history. Many historians believe that's because we're seeing the survivor, not the beginning. Ancient records suggest that engineers such as Archimedes and other inventors built astonishing mechanical devices centuries before the shipwreck sank. Most of those devices were made from bronze, and bronze had value. When civilizations collapsed, metal was melted down and reused. Machines disappeared, libraries burned, knowledge vanished. The mechanism may be one of the only survivors of an entire technological tradition that no longer exists. Think about that. If one machine survived by accident on the bottom of the sea, how many others didn't? And that leads to perhaps the biggest misconception about the device. Because despite being called the world's first computer, it was missing the one thing every real computer needs, the thing it could never do. A modern computer can solve new problems. That's what makes it powerful. Ask it a question, give it new information, change the inputs. The computer adapts. The Antikythera mechanism couldn't. No matter how advanced it looks, it was trapped inside its own design. Every gear had a fixed purpose. Every movement was predetermined. Every prediction was already built into the machine. Couldn't learn. It couldn't be reprogrammed. It couldn't explore new ideas. If ancient astronomers discovered a better model of the universe, the mechanism wouldn't update itself. Someone would have to rebuild the machine from scratch. That's a huge limitation. In fact, calling it a computer can sometimes be misleading. It was closer to an incredibly sophisticated mechanical model, a physical simulation of the cosmos, a masterpiece of engineering, but not a thinking machine. And strangely enough, that limitation may be why it survived in our imagination. Because people started asking a dangerous question. If the ancient Greeks could build this, what else were they capable of? And some of the answers became wildly exaggerated. The alien theories and the real explanation. Whenever people encounter ancient technology that seems too advanced, strange theories appear. The Antikythera mechanism was no exception. Some claimed it proved lost civilizations existed. Others suggested visitors from somewhere else shared advanced knowledge. The stories spread because the machine feels out of place. It doesn't match the version of history most people learned in school. But the reality is actually more impressive. The device doesn't show that ancient people had impossible technology. It shows that ancient people were smarter than we often assume. Modern society tends to imagine progress as a straight line. Primitive, then advanced, simple, then complex. The Antikythera mechanism destroys that idea. History isn't a straight line. It's full of breakthroughs that appear, disappear, and are rediscovered centuries later. The Greeks didn't build smartphones, they didn't build satellites, but they understood mathematics, astronomy, geometry, and engineering at levels that still surprise researchers today. The mechanism wasn't evidence of magic, it was evidence of human potential. And the most remarkable part is what happened after it was built. Because this technology didn't spread across the world, it vanished. The technology that time forgot, the ship carrying the Antikythera mechanism, sank sometime around the 1st century BC. Then the device sat underwater for nearly 2,000 years, while empires rose and fell above it. The strange part isn't that the machine was lost. The strange part is that its technology seems to disappear from history. For centuries afterward, there is no clear evidence of anything equally sophisticated. It's as if humanity reached a summit and then walked back down the mountain. Eventually, mechanical clocks appeared, then astronomical clocks, then calculating devices, then modern computers. But the direct line connecting those inventions to the Antikythera mechanism remains frustratingly incomplete. It's one of history's biggest missing chapters. Not because we don't know what the machine did, we mostly do. The mystery is why the knowledge behind it didn't survive. Maybe the engineers died. Maybe the workshops disappeared. Maybe the libraries holding the instructions were destroyed. Whatever happened, an entire tradition of mechanical engineering faded into the shadows. And that's where the real lesson begins. Because the mechanism's greatest weakness wasn't technical, it was cultural. The Antikythera mechanism couldn't think, it couldn't learn, it couldn't adapt, it couldn't solve new problems. But it did something almost as remarkable. It proved what human beings are capable of when knowledge survives long enough to accumulate. A craftsman shaped gears, an astronomer recorded observations, a mathematician discovered patterns. Generation after generation added another piece, until one day someone built a machine that could model the heavens. And then much of that knowledge disappeared. For nearly 2,000 years, the Antikythera mechanism sat in darkness beneath the sea. Not because humanity wasn't intelligent enough to understand it, but because intelligence alone isn't enough. Knowledge has to survive. That's why the most important question raised by this ancient computer isn't how it worked. It's what happened to everything that came before it. Because if a machine this extraordinary could vanish from history for 2 millennia, what else has humanity already forgotten? Like and subscribe for more content like this.